All right. Well, good morning, everyone, and thank you all for joining us today. I'm Michelle Johnson, the event marketing specialist at Process Maker. Welcome to Process Maker's Digitize or Die series. In this series, we will help you get started or help you accelerate your digital transformation journey. This series will help you understand what digital transformation is and what it means for you and your financial institution, show you the necessary components of preparing your institution for the transformation, and give you some keys to kickstarting a successful digital transformation. You will hear from experts in the arena, leaders who are building the great tools, bankers who are leading successful transformations at their institutions, and SMEs who understand digital in banking. Today's speaker is Chuck Wakocha with panelists Steve Bishop and Jordan Ennis. Chuck leads the product marketing efforts for banking at Process Maker. As part of a stellar team at Process Maker, Mr. Wakocha's role is to help define and communicate Process Maker's value proposition and GTM strategy. Mr. Wakocha received a BA in psychology with a focus in organizations and economics from Harvard University and an MBA from the Keenan Flagler Business School at the University of North Carolina. Steve Bishop, he is the Chief Operating Officer at Old Missouri Bank. Hi, Steve. Steve joined OMB in September 2020, overseeing its physical and digital operations. Preceding OMB, Mr. Bishop had several stints at Jack Henry and Associates, most recently as Director of Client Services. Between roles at Jack Henry, he worked for AT&T as a senior financial analyst in its financial leadership development program, and for Citibank as Vice President of Offshore Management. Mr. Bishop is an active member of the Missouri State University Design Thinking Advisory Board. He holds master's degrees in operations, finance and strategy, as well as information management from Washington University, as well as a bachelor's degree in economics and finance from Missouri Southern State University. Jordan Ennis is a deposit product specialist and counsel at Compliance Systems. Jordan is a team member on the deposit and TFA product group at Compliance Systems. The deposit product and TFA product group is responsible for developing and maintaining all of Compliance Systems deposit products, which includes deposit account and online account opening solutions to retirement accounts, and ensuring that those products, A, create enforceable legal instruments, and B, comply with federal and state laws and regulations, other governing authority requirements, and industry best practice. Ms. Ennis has been with Compliance System for 6 years. Over the last few years, she has spearheaded the company's online and mobile banking initiatives and is product owner of Compliance System's mobile-first online account opening solution, Simplicity Mobile. She is licensed to practice in the state of Michigan. Should you have any questions during today's discussion, we ask you to put them in the Q&A section, and they will be answered following the event. Now I'd like to introduce Chuck.
All right, appreciate it, Michelle. Sometimes when you hear the bios, I feel like I am listening to you talk about someone else. Sometimes we don't always see ourselves in what our resumes are. But what I'm really thrilled is to have an opportunity to talk to both Steve and Jordan. As we identified here in the series, we're going to be talking to leaders in their various areas, in their various fields. So not only in the product side of things or in the solutions providers, but also from those bankers who are leading successful transformations at their institutions. So I'm really excited about this opportunity to have this conversation. Today is a start for a series, right? The Digitize or Die series. Our goal is to cover what digital transformation really is and how it goes through, how an institution attends to that, how they are approaching this, not only what it means for them when they hear and think about digital transformation, but what are those key things that they're doing? What are the lessons that are being learned as they go through this? So hopefully, as you guys are listening to this, you're able to pick up on some things and avoid mistakes that are made, or put yourself in a better position to really accelerate the transformation at your institutions. And of course, the subject matter experts in various areas, not just at the banks, but those who are attached or part of the ecosystem in this. Now, I've been given a hard time about the title, "The Digitize or Die." Been told that it's maybe a little bit more morbid, or may sound a bit Chicken Little, as if the sky is falling. But I think it's important to really understand what that digitize or die means and why I chose that. And the point that we are in development, I think banks and credit unions as well, right? All financial institutions should really look at this point as an existential point in the movement, right? If you're not progressing, if you're not moving forward, then as a stagnant institution, or you're actually moving backwards. And so the impetus for this series is for us to take this as an idea and explore what that really means and how we understand it. I think, as we get into this, one of the ways I like to think about this is think about the speed in which transformation is happening. And I wanted to talk about a few cautionary tales, the Blockbuster and Netflix as a cautionary tale, and how that impacts the way we're approaching this digitize or die concept. In Netflix and Blockbuster, and I will also invite Jordan and Steve to contribute to this. But in thinking about this, how quickly things moved in the development, I see by analogy some of the same things in our financial institutions and our financial services industry, what we are encountering and what we're facing. In 1985, when Blockbuster was founded, to its peak in 2004, that was about 19 years. Right, as it moved and as it grew and it continued to develop. But as digitization started to take place, the speed at which things moved from 2004 at their peak to where they filed for bankruptcy in 2010, it was only a period of 6 years. And from that 2010 to 2012, when they waved the white flag, it was only 2 years. So quickly in that, things really accelerated and moved. You're going from a pace where typically in the analog world, there's a certain trajectory which you move, but that changes entirely when you move into digital sphere. And juxtaposed to that was Netflix, which was founded in 1997, and a few short years later, it went IPO. Right? How quickly they're able to move from inception, and as a male-based entity, at that, till just 10 years later, where they, in 2007, where they really just focused and shifted to being a primarily streaming on-demand video service, right? It is the pace at which that moves. And then, of course, as they're going through that, how the entire landscape has changed from that. And Steve, I know we were having this conversation, and you mentioned that not only comparing Netflix to Blockbuster, but also that changing landscape, the new entrants and the other folks that really changed how we consume video and how we consume this environment. And so sorry, go ahead.
I didn't know if you wanted me to comment on that or not, but absolutely agree. It's interesting to see, from Blockbuster to Netflix, and now Netflix is feeling all these pressures and from new entrants into the marketplace. So excited to chat more about how that relates to financial institutions.
Absolutely. And if we think about that, in our financial world, right, the ability to or when banks introduce ATMs, right, when banks introduce credit cards as a means to now mobile being mobile focused and mobile centric in this. And I know that's an area for you, Jordan, that you really think about and focus on, where mobile first is an approach to to banking, and how we really need to think about how we're consuming banking.
Yeah, that's definitely one of the company initiatives we've had, is just making sure our banking processes and really the industry as a whole is a mobile first tailored solution. And a lot of times when we talk to our customers of when do you need the solution by, or what are you looking to do to implement this, it's always, well, we needed this yesterday. So if the COVID pandemic didn't accelerate these initiatives to digitize things, it's definitely on everyone's roadmap today.
So I think that's a great starting point for us to to dig into this. So I want to take a step back and really look at digital transformation. What does that actually mean? Digitization, digital transformation, digital transformation. So I'll take that to you, Steve, or actually let me keep on with you, Jordan. Right, in your work at Compliance Systems and with your customers and your understanding of the environment, what does digital transformation mean to you?
Yeah, so I think you hit the nail on the head with your opening remarks, just making the banking industry a mobile first or mobile enabled solution. We do a lot of things on our phone. We go grocery shopping, we book our appointments. So people really want to reflect that, those things that they do in other aspects of their life in the banking industry. So people nowadays are opening up their bank accounts online. They're not necessarily going into a bank. There is not that passing back and forth of papers. So it's really streamlining that account opening process so that it's more accessible and efficient for the customers to do so in the convenience of their own home. And then the second point is, not only is it a physical transformation, such as making the industry mobile first, but really it's a shift of the mindset. The banking industry is just so ingrained with just a traditional banking sense that you are going to go into a bank, you're going to talk to a teller or a banker, and then you're going to receive papers, but that's just not the way that we're doing it nowadays. So it's shifting that mindset away from the traditional banking sense and more digitizing it of we should be able to do these things in the comforts of our own home, so they do reflect our other internet experiences.
Yeah, and that shift of a mindset, I think, that's really what resonates and hits me, right? It's how you look at things, and I think that's probably one of the most critical points of that. So, Steve, for you at the bank, right, at OMB, what is digital transformation? How do you understand it? How are you applying that at the institution?
For me, digital transformation is probably not the term that really I think of when I think about it. When I think of digital, I think online banking, mobile, definitely the digital piece. And you may hear me say it again if you've heard me speak before. You've probably heard it, but the goal is to allow your customer to bank where they want, when they want, and how they want. We have a pretty diverse customer base, and whether it is folks that don't use technology at all. I think we have a large Mennonite population, and there's minimal technology there, to those that only want the digital space. So it's about making sure that you have the right tools to fit your customers and allow them to achieve the things that they need to in their financial lives.
So I heard really being able to bank where you want, how you want, where you want, and all those things, right? So that's telling me a hybrid approach is what one of the hallmarks of this for you, right? If transformation is part of this, it's not necessarily a doing away of other things, but adding additional capabilities. Is that right?
It is, and I think you have your traditional banking, and it's easy to get comfortable there and to stick with what you know and how you've won in the past. But you have to be looking, for what those new challenges are. Just like Blockbuster should have been looking for Netflix. Netflix has new things in their marketplace. And so you have your traditional banking, you have the new digital, and you have to look at your tech stack and see, make sure that you can innovate with the market. And you don't necessarily want to be bleeding edge, but you want to be a close follower if you're wanting to capture that market share.
When you say you don't want to be at the leading edge, I laugh. Came across this sometime last year, and pardon who I forget who to attribute this to, but it's the banker's prayer, as I heard. Please, Lord, don't let me be first, right? But be a fast follower. And why is that a challenge, Steve?
Bankers are notoriously conservative and slow to move. And yeah, I'm not a traditional community banker, which is, for the executive team, we have a balance of traditional bankers and then people that came from similar landscapes, but not exactly community banking. So we have a good conversation that's well rounded. But I get excited about new things and exciting things, but you see things, we saw the FTX leader was arrested last night. So a lot of success. Definitely was amazing to build up a company that large before he was even 30. But he was also on the bleeding edge and didn't have the appropriate controls in place, didn't make sure that he was dotting the I's and crossing the T's, and got himself in trouble. And now the company's bankrupt and he's in a prison in the Bahamas.
Yeah, his cautionary tale of sorts from that point of view as well, right? So you said that you're not a traditional banker with certain respects, at least being progressive minded in these things. And so I would assume that for a lot of institutions, pushing, I guess the digital strategy or helping define those as part of a bank's priority. I guess tell me about what kind of challenges that you've encountered or what kind of challenges, you've seen in trying to push, I guess, those who are called old guard or legacy minded with respect to technology.
I think people see the need for technology. They see the need to change, but change can be hard, and new things can be difficult. So over the last 2 years, we've had a core conversion. We've had a lot of tech updates. And it's all about, you have to find the right partners to go with, but also managing your change management. And I try not to push too far. I definitely can, I stretch the team. They might say that I go a little too hard at times. But moderation is not something I do well. So it's making sure that you have that balance. So while I am looking for change and I want to get to the end state, I want to get there as fast as we can, but we want to get there as safe as we can as well. And so having an open dialogue both with leadership and your team, making sure that you're open to that, and it's okay. One of my tenets of leadership is to empower the employees. And that with that empowerment, they have the ability to talk and let me know what's going on if they feel things are changing too fast. It's not always the easy choice that you have to make, but it's making the right choice. And so you just have to make sure you're getting feedback at all levels, and so that you have the right pace to make the changes. You have that end state in mind, realize that it's going to take a long time to get there.
Yeah. There was something you said I think would be a great point for us to, to move into the next subject area, and that's, in the banking as a service, BaaS, right, BaaS. And we had a previous conversation about this, Jordan, about the ability to leverage or work with partners, right? It's really difficult to be able to deliver on everything, from one institution or one provider. Talk to me a little bit more about, your experience and, working with partners and trying to create the right environment with that.
Yeah, finding the right partnership is definitely key in any service industry, but definitely in the banking industry as well. It's like any other relationship. You want to make sure that your goals and your values are aligned. So that's really important to us at Compliance Systems. And I think Steve also touched on a great point of just making sure the partnership is going where the market is going. We see a lot of where fintechs or businesses out there are really just innovating just to innovate, but that's not necessarily what the market needs or what the customers really need. So finding that feedback loop, making sure you're talking to the customers, both yourself and the partners, to make sure that you're fitting the need and the requests of the customers that are out there.
A quick scan of the ecosystem and environment. I mean, there are so many different folks providing, similar services. How do you go about identifying who a good partner will be and how they may be a good fit to you or to what you're trying to accomplish?
Yeah, it's definitely making sure, as I said, like the values are aligned. If you're misaligned, there's just always going to be tension. There's going to be that miscommunication, and that's really as if you're in a relationship or just with the customer as well. So just making sure the values are aligned, making sure your objectives are clear at the end of the day, and making sure that you're have all the mindset to hit that goal at the end of the day.
Gotcha. And Steve, as you're driving this as well, you guys are putting pieces around your strategy, putting pieces around your systems, and you have made different selections for partners. Is there a key nugget that can help some of our listeners determine, hey, this may be a good partner or this may be a good fit for our strategy?
I think similar to what Jordan was talking about, it comes down to communication, so much of it, and you have to build that trust, and excuse me, having the right partner, it's communication. And we had a partner that we had signed with probably too early, had some bumps in the road, and then as we went to market, realized that it wasn't going to fit our needs, and we didn't communicate the best way in the beginning. Things got a bit contentious, and then we kind of level set and came back, and now found a way to move forward. It's finding that having that communication and clear deliverables, so you're going the right way. You have to do your homework. Banking as a service in general, I think it's probably overused. You hear everyone say they want to do it. There's not a lot of people that are doing it. I don't know that there's a lot of people that know exactly. I don't know exactly what it means.
I was just about to ask you. I threw this out there, and it's like, all right, what does that actually mean?
Well, before you ask me, I'm not. I mean, I can give you a definition.
Yeah, why not? Tell us.
But it's very fluid.
Yeah.
For us as OMB, banking as a service is a priority that we want to partner with a fintech. And part of, if you look at their published metrics, but our challenge is our cost of funds. And so we view that as a potential way for us to reduce our cost of funds. We've been fortunate to have tremendous growth. And we've had our lending team is phenomenal, but we pay more for our money. And so if we can solve that, it helps us grow, even accentuate our growth. So banking as a service is pretty much, you can define that how you need to as an institution. There's different ways to do it. You can either stick with your traditional banking. You can look for one of the cores to monetize it and then have them do it and they take all the money. You can have an intermediary that handles the fintech relationship and they'll have a share, or you can invest in-house. There are pros and cons to all of those. And so we're still, we have one fintech partnership today, and we're working on some additional things. So that's definitely going to be part of what we're looking at, and you'll see from us in 2023.
Okay, I'm looking forward to seeing some of those things play out. All right, so Jordan, back to you on that, right? Banking as a service, your company gets called upon to help deliver services, right? So when you're talking, at least the thought leadership, the education piece of it, and communicating to your would-be partners, what are the things that you try to communicate to them?
Making sure that we're aligned for customer representation. Are we, on the same page of what we want to deliver to the customer? As Steve said, deliverables are very important. Making sure there's that open line of communication. So not just communication, but you have to have an open line. It needs to be reciprocal. There's some partnerships that we get into and it's a dead end. So it looks more promising than maybe it is at the beginning, just because they might be a name in the industry or they have great feedback. But when you actually begin that relationship and begin that partnership with them, it kind of becomes stale and you can't always get a hold of people, maybe even as simple as that. So it's making sure that there's that open line of communication, that reciprocity, and just making sure that you're really trying to meet the market and you all know what your piece is in the role, not overstepping boundaries. That seems to happen a lot too. But each and every one of us has a role in the industry, or we wouldn't be looking for partnerships to fill something that we may not be may not have a strength in. So making sure everyone knows what their tasks are, open line of communication, and meeting the mark at the end of the day.
I got you on that. One of the things you mentioned here also makes me think about what the approach to this, and that's customer experience. I often try to take a step back and think, what does that look like for me? And Jordan, you mentioned about, the customer experience, trying to create, that Amazon experience, and taking that mindset shift that you mentioned earlier, right? So, in where we've become a mobile first and an app-driven society. So when you're thinking about this from your experience, how do you approach it? How do you take that and then apply it to the relationships and engagements you have with the financial institutions?
Yeah, as a fintech, we in the banking industry, there's definitely different demographics. You have here right here on the PowerPoint a generational shift. So there are different generations that do banking differently. You do have the more forward thinking, innovative, that they want to have everything at the fingertips. They do not want to have to go anywhere that they don't want to go. But then yet there's that more legacy traditional banking. There's that comfort of going into a bank and knowing that I can speak to someone. And although there's that generational shift, I still think there's always going to be, going back to like the hybrid approach that we were talking about, that there's always going to need a place for going into a bank and having that human connection. Definitely for certain instances and certain transactions that you really can't do on an app. I know for my personal experience, I was one of the crazy ones that decided to buy a house in June 2020. And no banks were open. I had to make an appointment to wire money for my down payment. I couldn't do that in an app. So there's definitely still going to be that need where you need to go into a bank to do certain transactions. Not only because you're required to by the bank, you can't do certain things, but also there's just that human connection. You still want that guidance by the bankers. You still want that second pair of eyes on a large amount of money going out of your account. So definitely an app-driven society, but making sure that it is balanced with the generations or those human connections that we still want from a more traditional banking sense.
So thinking about that, Steve, over the last couple of years, right? So the accelerator of sorts that the COVID environment created, or the things that were pushed into a digital, sphere. How has that changed in terms of the foot traffic at your branch, or the types of activities that people are, I guess, are steering more towards a digital, or those that they still rely on, having, and I think, as you mentioned, a large Mennonite population. How is that, what does that change look like over the last couple of years at your institution?
Yeah, I'm probably not the best example for that, because we have just our demographic, a lot of commercial driven, and that's where our growth comes from, is our ag and commercial lending. So I don't know that foot traffic, I mean, obviously foot traffic was affected with COVID and branch closures. Well, we minimized those. Fortunately, our competitors didn't. But I think it's not for us. It's not about the change of foot traffic over the past couple of years. That's not going to be the same for all financial institutions. But if you look back, 2 years, even last year, you heard all this noise and about the neobanks are coming and they're taking over everything, and that's the opportunity for community banks is really to have an app-driven society, but still have the brick and mortar for when you need us. We're going to roll out a nationwide. It's similar to the neobanks, but we'll have the high interest savings and share from them. We'll also have those presents that you can, like, brick and mortar in our geographic area. But also we'll have people on the phones if you want to talk to us, or like Jordan was saying, with a wire, you don't want to send that, you don't want to do a wire on an app, because once that money's gone, it's gone. And there's things to protect the consumer in other ways of sending money. But a password shift, I mean, I would not be happy if I had to call and go to my bank to fill out a form to change a password, have someone then reset. So it just depends on the, so foot traffic changes. It hasn't changed much for us, but as we expand what we do, where we are, it's going to be, have that app-driven change components.
Gotcha. I always try to straddle, myself, not only as a consumer and how I experience this, but also as a deliverer of a product, or as a vendor, what that, that balance is. So I was thinking about what you were saying, Jordan, as an app-driven society, I want to consume things in a certain way. I am used to doing everything from an app, or, as necessary. How does that impact, Jordan, right, as from a consumer? How does that impact your decision on who to bank with, right? Will you make changes, or will you wait? Will you make changes if your primary institution is not providing the service the way you want?
I mean, I definitely think that that's great feedback if someone's not providing a service that we might want to digitize or innovate for. However, there's a saying at Compliance Systems that I think our president said a few years ago, that if you're not thinking of what's going to be relevant now for in the future, then you're already behind. And that obviously goes back to just the theme of digitize or die to continue growing. So obviously that's great feedback if someone is not using something that we had thought that the market wanted. But then again, they're one of many that we have. And so there's just that balance of being flexible, of not being too innovative, and also meeting the market. And really, as far as an app-driven society, everything is at our fingertips. And for Compliance Systems, that's not only making sure that our documents are that mobile enablement that I keep referring back to. So is the documents look good when I'm opening an account? Like, do they aesthetically look good? Do I have that pinch and zoom that's so cumbersome with PDFs? But also, people want the information right at their hands. So for example, overdrafts is obviously huge right now, or NSF fees. So people that want to, or the customers that actually read their documents first and foremost, but they just really want to know more about certain topics that are in their disclosures. So really going above and beyond the words that are on the page. And I think that's important even in an institution, to make sure that, again, they're just customer centric and they have all the information and either a video or some other supplemental material to provide them with access to other information within the disclosures out there.
You know, at disclosures, I'll be the first to admit that I'm probably not the person that reads disclosures or reads them very closely. Um, it, how do we get around that? Is there a way to get around that, Jordan?
For providing disclosures or just in a
Well, they
accessible
get provided
way?
all the time, but I'm just not reading them.
Chuck, I saw there was a graphic I once saw, and it's the lie most often told within humanity, and it's I have read and reviewed all the terms and conditions online. So.
Yeah, it's like the Apple iOS updates or the Delta. There's just ways to make it more accessible while being in compliance. So in one of our solutions, there really is no signatures. We're not capturing a wet signature. It really is that click the sign or that checkbox that we're familiar with those other terms and conditions, like buying an airline ticket or those Apple updates. So I don't necessarily think there's a way to get around it. There's definitely obviously legal and regulatory implications. So we do have to follow the black letter law. However, they have made modifications just with electronic, e-sign act or the transactions to make it a little more broad to fit digitizing things in this banking landscape. So I don't think we're ever going to get around not having these documents, but I definitely think there are ways to make it still accessible and to reduce that friction with customers and the banking solution. So there's not that stale application or the abandonment rates. So I think the disclosures are here to stay. Unfortunately, there's definitely ways to streamline the process. And I think that's what everyone is really trying to do, is to streamline it and reduce that friction for customers.
Well, while they're here to stay, I'll still be scrolling and pretending like I read them. So as we move into our closing thoughts, one of the areas I always like to think about is, if I knew then what I know now, right? What are those things that I wish I would have done? I wish I would have known at an earlier point, as we continue to progress. I'll start with you, Steve. You, again, leading some of this charge and not being or pushing people who are a little bit more complacent. What are the things that you wish you would have done a bit better or learned at an earlier stage?
I mean, it makes me sound so violent, and I'm pushing people.
Some people need a little nudge to get moving, right?
I think it's making sure you have a constant feedback loop. Too often, and that's like for all of life, it's the you can have an echo chamber, or people they like to be positive and say yes, and we don't always need to hear yes. We need to know what's going on. People tend to be open to change when they understand change, and if you move too fast and don't take time to explain why, I mean, the whole start with why, that's a real thing. You start with it and explain it, and I mean, so if you look at disclosures, they're there for a reason, and they're for protection, so you know what's going on, and you have the choice of whether you take the time to read them or not. So understanding the why, and then allowing you to take care of that how you want, when you want, and where you want. So if you want to skip them and be a Chuck, then you can. If you want to take time to read them, you can. But it's up to you. And we live in a very selfish society that that they want to do things the way they want to do them. So as a business, the more you can solve problems the way people want them to be solved, then that just opens you up for more success.
Jordan, same thing to you. And I heard you, not to lead the witness here, but, talked a lot about accessibility and mobile enablement. Banking today is opposed to banking in the future. I guess taking that same thing, what have you learned? How do you apply those? How do you look forward and try to minimize the things that, that didn't go as well, and while enhancing the things you could do better?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, as a fintech compliance systems, there's definitely we get excited. We get excited about making everything more innovative and digitizing things. However, like Steve was saying, you got to find that balance, because growth is, or change is, hard for people to sometimes consume. So it's kind of just taking back the reins, taking a step back of, we could do it that one way, but we really need to, find that balance of making sure that we're innovative, but also the solutionizing for those legacy type systems in that traditional banking sense. So it's there's not one right solution. There's many solutions, and it's being able to adapt and be flexible based on that customer feedback that seems to be echoing throughout all of our statements here.
All right. So, I'm thinking about this, Steve, by the way, I saw you at the Money 2020 conference, such a large place, and, the number of service providers there were legion. I mean, for a while, it felt like, overwhelming. Anything catch your eye while you were there, or just, you thought this is looking into the future? And I guess it's just a very general question there.
That is general. I thought what happened in Vegas stayed in Vegas, so just bring that up. It was Money 2020 year over year. It was interesting to me. It's an amazing conference. There's just so much going on. There is something there for everyone. The big thing that I noticed was crypto. There were some crypto presence, but there was one company that had this huge booth last year, and this year was just like this tiny little corner booth. And so it just, to me, that talks about how quickly the market can change. And I apologize, my dogs are wanting to get a final comment in. It's the season for Amazon deliveries. But the markets change rapidly, and my wife and I were joking about a certain company that it looked like they had paid for their signage the year before, and the crypto fell because I didn't see them at the conference other than that signage, and they were having massive layoffs during the show. So I mean, those are more cautionary tales as far as like markets can change so fast. You have to keep a pulse on it. Have that constant feedback loop. A lot more. There was digital account opening, a lot of reg tech. Those things will be interesting to see. Just as you have digital components, and it broadens, making sure that you're in compliance. Those are big pieces there. So you see, there's a lot of things that are the same year over year. You see things changing. But keep your eye on it and pulse, and constantly be checking to make sure that you're not, if you're not looking to the future, you are obsolete. So how do you stay relevant?
That's a great transition point here into a little bit of our Q&A. I got a few minutes here that we'll take a few of the questions that have come in. And I was thinking about this. And as we were talking as well, right? One of the questions here was that disintermediation, right? How do you approach that, when you're being challenged by these challenger banks, these neobanks, or these various service providers who are taking on things that were previously being delivered by banks? How do you decide which ones you continue to deliver, or which ones that you seek to partner or find a best in breed approach to it? So I'm sorry. I would say I would say there was a lot in that question. So take what part of that you feel like addressing.
I think for us as a leadership team at OMB, we have a big strategic meeting, like so many people do, that measure what matters, and OKRs. We identify 3 to 5, and it usually is 4. Crazy math there, but we have these are our top objectives, and this is what we as a team are committed to, and we have one person that's the champion of it. And underneath that goal, we have our, the metrics that say whether we're successful or not. You realize that you can't be everything to everyone. So there are plenty of ways to win a business, but you can't do all of them, or you'll win at nothing. So for us, we have our traditional organic growth, the ag and commercial lending that we'll stick with, and then we have two areas that we're looking at growing and expanding into. So they all are very closely aligned and close verticals in how we go, what we're doing. But I think it's being focused, that's kind of a recurring theme. Your why, of why you're doing the change, why you're doing, what you're doing to get to that step, execute on that strategy. So I'll stop spewing buzzwords now. I mean, that's really what we're doing, is picking the direction you want to go, mapping out that plan, and then executing on it.
All right, yeah, there are lots of buzzwords, and I think maybe in another session we'll address all those buzzwords, acronyms that are thrown about. Sometimes it can feel dizzying. Jordan, I guess I'd like you to address this. We'll take this last one here, and it's in rather broad questions. What do you see as the primary industry trends as they, apply towards digital transformation in banking?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think the accessibility of doing banking from your mobile phone is here to stay, and just always making that better, making it more accessible, getting information at people's fingertips. So we see here at Compliance Systems as something that's trending or will be trending is just that interactiveness. So the chat functionality, people don't, kind of like what Steve was saying of changing your password, people don't want to call anybody. They just want that chat functionality, that interactive functionality, even with banking that we experience in other internet experiences that we have. I definitely see like omni platforms and even real-time payments. Those are huge, and making sure those are all safe systems. Lots to do with fraud out there, and just making sure they're as safe as possible, and making sure those automatic processes in the back end of a financial institution is in place to meet the front end.
Yeah, the thing that is so key. That connection between the front end and back end. So a couple of parting thoughts here. I like this. Once upon a time, I actually took one of these, believe it or not. I still had one, the 8-inch floppy disk, and I taped it to the wall in the office and put, 2 columns, check off if you know what this is, right? And so ask folks in our office, and you could see that by the numbers, almost I could pinpoint the 4 people who knew what these were and the other 13 who didn't. And there's a demographic shift, and by that age, you can clearly see who'd use this. And the reason I bring that up is for a number of us, this was what we use to relay, convey, and move information. But my laptop now doesn't even have a slot for a CD drive, much less, anything that resembles this. And then also the amount of information that can be stored in that third generation, the 3.5-inch floppy disk. It's one small compressed picture of my phone far outweighs all the stuff, or is much larger than all the stuff on that floppy disk. And one of those floppy disks has all the papers and all the homework I ever did in college contained within it. So I bring that up because that, in a matter of 3 or 4 years, we went from one to the other and then completely away from that. So thinking about what the future holds, not only in this digitize or die idea, but understanding that we can't predict who our future competitors are to a certain degree, right? And we can't necessarily predict what this change is going to look like, but we have to be ready to make the change. And as Steve said at the beginning of it, as bankers are notoriously slow to adopt change, that mind shift the mindset shift necessary is going to be what allows banks to survive, to get past that digitize or die, right? The digitize is going to be important. The reliance on the old ways, the old legacy systems is what's going to keep banks from progressing. Hence, to keep myself from using the term die or to change in such a way that they can no longer be viable in the future. So as we wrap up here, I'd like to thank Steve and Jordan for giving us a bit of your time this morning. And as we look forward to the next sessions, we'll dive into a little bit more technical side of things. We'll look at some systems and we'll look at exploring this digitize or die concept a little bit further. For those who were able to attend, you will also get a copy of this recorded, and then also information on the next sessions from both the Process Maker team, the Compliance Systems team, as well as things that the OMB team is doing going forward in the future. Thank you, my panelists, Steve. Thank you, Jordan. And we look forward to connecting with y'all in the future.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Yes, thank you.
All right, bye, everyone.